able, and join as Councilmember Daras leads us in the pledge to our flag. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Here.
Councilmember Daras,
Here.
Councilmember Newsom, here, Mayor Pro Tem Funk,
Here.
and Mayor Moreno is absent.
And I will add to that this is nothing untoward has happened. Mayor Moreno is out of town, and per standard protocols, since I'm serving as Mayor Pro Tem currently, then I'm the one chairing this particular meeting. I promise you, I didn't do anything to the mayor. So for all of you who are attending in person or listening to the city council meeting tonight, I do welcome you. If you would like to speak by telephone during the time set aside for community forum or during public comment on any of our items, then I would invite you to call this into our Zoom call. And the number you need to call is, write it down, 669-900-6833. And you'll also need to use a meeting ID, and that is 889-2347-9018. Let me do that one more time. 669-900-6833, and use meeting ID 889-2347-9018. Thank you. And also, when you do call in, please let us know which item you want to speak on, or items, so we know to recognize you then. Okay. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Also move. I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Here.
Councilmember Daras,
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom. Yes. And Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor
Did,
Moreno.
did you ask for? Yeah. Oh, okay. We're having entirely too good a time tonight. Cats away, the mice will play. Okay. Now is the time for the consent calendar. All the items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff and will be approved by one motion if no member of the council or public wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered as in a listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council concerning the item before the action is taken. Is there any member of the council wishing to pull on the item? Seeing none. Is there any member of the public wishing to pull?
Yes, please. Not sure the order because the order of contents was different than the order that was publicized in the agenda packet from last week, which is also this week.
Can you describe the item?
Yeah, I will. I believe it's item number 4, item number 13, and item number 8. If I'm not mistaken, 4 and 8 might be kind of duplication. It's the one on large machinery, and the other one would be on the square footage that can be separate.
May I take it that you are referring to items that are part of the text amendments to the planning and zoning code?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's pull that entire item in order to allow for discussion of any elements of that.
Also, if
for
it
the-
pleases the council, and they want to pass all the others, but those ones, that's fine too, till we discuss.
Yeah, we will discuss that in public comment. Right now, do I have an item? Do I have a motion to approve the item number 1 on the
Approval of item
Consent.
A1 on the consent calendar.
I'll second.
roll call, please?
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom. Yes. Councilmember Daras
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Moreno absent.
Okay. Now we have the item 2, which is the second reading of text amendments to Title III Finance and Title IX Planning and Zoning Code. And since Mr. Osland has requested this be pulled from the consent agenda, I will open up public comment at this time.
Great, thank you. Jeff Oslin, resident. Like some clarification if possible. So on the square footage for a detached, the way I read it and the way it was presented, I'm confused. I believe you can do up to 100% of your house, up to a certain amount of square footage. And that was confusing under detached. There was a couple lines in there about attached. I don't see any changes to the attached. So if that's the case, I'd like to have that stricken and just stay with detached, please. And
Jeff, can you say what page that's on?
I believe it was page 66 or 67,
That would help.
if I'm not mistaken.
May I clarify, Mayor Pro Tem? Well, I'm a little confused. This is second reading, so this is exactly what you approved last time. And so usually the second reading, you don't redebate or try and change something different. So I'd like to understand from Mr. Osland, if there's a clerical error in this or something different, I'm certainly open to hearing that, but this should be exactly what was approved. Mr. Dunsmore is on the Zoom if we need to hear from him. And if we do change wording, we have to go back through the process. I just wanted to remind the council and community of that.
Right. So thank you for the clarification. So if there were some change in the wording tonight, requested by the council, that those items, either we could approve some items and the others would have to go back to first reading and second reading, or we would approve this package as a whole as approved in the first reading, and then ask staff to come back at a later time with clarifying or amendments of some kind.
Yeah, typically when you're approving an ordinance on second reading, you can make changes that are typographical or just clerical errors. But if you're making substantive changes to the ordinance, it has to come back as an entire ordinance. It can't pick and choose from the ordinance and approve certain portions of it since it's a unitary ordinance.
Okay.
So based on that,
before I invite Mr. Osland to continue, could I ask staff to clarify what the implications would be of delaying, of having this come back for a first reading and then a second reading again, which would essentially delay it for another month?
Right. So there are a few projects that are waiting for some of these changes. They were anticipated. They participated 2 weeks ago. So if you fundamentally change any of the wording, we would come back on first reading. So 2 weeks from now or a month from now, depending on what you changed, we'd come back and then we'd have second reading and then go into effect 30 days after that. So it prolongs it 30 to 60 days. Well, you can certainly do that, but it would have to start the process over. So I'd be curious if there are comments being brought up this evening that why weren't they brought up 2 weeks ago, and what's so fundamentally different that requires us to begin the process? That's what I'd ask the council to consider.
Yeah, that is something for us to consider in our deliberations from this. It is not the first time that someone has come up with an issue on second reading that they were not aware of or did not raise at first reading, but raised later.
maybe I can clarify.
So, okay, before I recognize you again, are there other questions from council about how we're proceeding on this item? No, okay, then let me reopen public comment. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Mr.
I'll
Osler.
give clarification. I went back and reread the agenda packet. The agenda packet was slightly different than the presentation and what was proposed. And that's why those three I have questions about, and if this is not the time to really debate it, I will say that I would request that the council delay the second reading, that we can have a discussion on those three items. Thank you.
And if you would clarify what the three items are that you wish that you're concerned about.
Yes.
You mentioned the square footage of detached housing.
Yes, that's one, the square footage change to the detached housing. And the other two, I believe, have a correlation together, which is the screening or fencing and banning of large equipment. Those, I don't know if the definitions are appropriate. That would be my opinion. And the second part to that is maybe we could do something on an acreage per basis. I did drive around this city and I have a lot of comment on that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, the third one that you wish to item was,
They were kind of tied together in two different spots and they were both regarding like fencing or screening of large equipment. And also saying that residents can have large equipment stored on their property. That we were banning that.
okay, thank you. Are there any other public comment on this item? In the room, I see none. Let me check on the online. Yes, I see. Mr. Kirkland, can you unmute Mr. Kirkland so he can speak? Thank you. Mr.
Sorry,
Kirkland, you're recognized.
sorry, I just wanted to comment on public comment. I didn't understand when I was supposed to raise my hand for that. So I'll
We'll
wait.
come back to you in just a moment then on general public comment unless you have a comment. Right now, we are dealing with the second item on the consent calendar, which was opened up at the request of a member of the public.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
We'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the phones for this item? Okay, then I will close public comment on this item and come back to the council for discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I was going to acknowledge though that we did also receive, I believe, a comment from somebody in an email form as well on this subject, or not on this subject, but on this agenda item. But I think, we as a council discussed it at some length, not necessarily on, each of the items mentioned, but we discussed the overall thing at some length 2 weeks ago. I've certainly had a lot of questions myself that staff answered. I'm a little concerned that we would, reconsider it a second reading. This is an annual thing. We do this every year. I don't know if it's anything that you could do even more frequently than annual. You probably wouldn't want to because of the staff time, but that we could, we should proceed with the second reading and adopting it. And if Mr. Oslin or others have concerns about what we passed, then we could readdress it. We could readdress it at another, at another time, at least 6 months down the road, but most likely in a year.
Yes, I just want to add to that. I think some of the issues that you're concerned about can probably be in, Mr. Dunsmore can clarify this, can be easily taken care of with the administrative use permit or at the administrative level, if it's something, but I don't want to overstep my bounds on that, but if Phil is available and he can explain that on specific thing like screening, how that can be handled, that might not specifically be clear in the ordinance, then hopefully he's available for that. Thank you.
On that particular topic, I know I asked several questions and felt very satisfied with the answer on that particular piece, the storage of large scale equipment. So it's not one I would want to open.
And in regards to what was in the agenda packet, there was some clarification that was done during the meeting that listed some of those changes and intent and clarification. So the intent is not to single out one person, but to address multiple issues all at the same time.
Yeah. And as with Councilmember Bourbeau, I felt we had a significant discussion, some good questions that came up at the first reading. And we did, particularly with regard to the fencing of housing of large equipment, did go through it and ensure that there was in fact a very specific definition that seemed to satisfy members, certainly satisfied me in terms of clarity for that. There can always be somebody with a new kind of piece of equipment that's on the edge, and that those can be resolved in interpretation. I don't think we have to anticipate every possible piece of equipment in the statute. And we also did have discussion with regard to the percentage of square footage of the home for the accessory structure. Is that something that Phil would like to clarify?
Council, if I may, yes, I'm here listening to your whole conversation, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions on the code that you recommended for adoption a couple of weeks ago. What exactly would you like clarification on? I'm looking at the section now that's on page 51 and 52 of your staff report, which talks about accessory structures, which talks about the exceptions and the size limits and the design standards, and just want to be available to answer any specific questions you have. Thank you.
Could you clarify in the discussion on accessory structures on page 51, that pertains is we see in item B to detached accessory structures and not to attached storage?
That is correct.
Okay. And the other one is, could you grab and just read for the record the definition of what constitutes the kind of large equipment that would be not permitted on residential property without fencing?
Yes, let me just find that page where that is. I think that's a couple pages prior.
44.
Thank you. Actually, I don't believe that's you're talking about the heavy vehicle equipment. I think on page 44, it's talking about utility and mechanical equipment and equipment at grade. So I think,
Page 50, Phil.
yeah, thank you. There we go. Okay, so near the bottom of the page, it talks about oversized heavy equipment storage. And generally, this is talking about a home occupation when someone has a home business, a home office. And this clarifies what you can keep at your house as part of a home occupation. And the storage of oversized equipment is limited to one item that may be stored on site, such as a tractor or a big trailer, big construction equipment. And that there's a limit for these things that when they're 5,000 pounds or more, such as a Sweco tractor, and that it must be entirely screened from the public right-of-way, public street, and the adjacent lots. And then that the city engineer can determine if there's adequate access to the site without impacting the streets.
Okay. And am I correct in understanding that the particular definition on page 50 is includes but is not limited to self-propelled, self-powered or pull-type equipment and machinery weighing 5,000 pounds or more, primarily employed for construction, industrial, and forestry uses, such as a water tender, backhoe, mini excavator, or Sweco tractor?
That's right, yes.
Okay. Yes. That's my motion.
This is only if they have a home office occupation or a business license.
Yes.
So if somebody brings home and does some construction on the weekend, it doesn't apply.
That doesn't apply, no, because obviously on a construction site where you're actually doing authorized construction, you're going to have all sorts of equipment. So this is where someone has something 365 days a year, multiple years, where they're running the business from their house, not for construction. Construction is completely exempt from these standards.
Farming is exempt from this standard as well, correct?
Yes, that's right. This is not associated with farming because the farming, again, is an ongoing activity on a property. And this is associated with someone running a business from their house, performing business at other locations throughout our region.
Okay.
Thank you.
Done? Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move approval of item A2.
I'll second.
I'll roll, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Moreno absent.
Okay, thank you. And there's always opportunity to have other items in the future as we continue to refine this code. Okay, now is the time for updates from the city manager. I'd like to recognize Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. Yes, I do have a few things to share. First and foremost, we were thrilled on our weekend last weekend to celebrate women and International Women's Day with a fireworks show and music. And we had hundreds of people through the building on tours as we celebrated the role women played in the founding of Atascadero and in the creation of its society. So we're very proud of our history there, and just had incredible tours. And this community has some very, very many influential women that have led it, including Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Newsom. And so we're very proud to celebrate that this weekend, culminating in a street fair on Sunday. We had over 40 vendors. Gosh, sure looked like thousands of people to me over the course of the afternoon, enjoying food, wine, and items from women-owned businesses. And so that was really special. We also, at the same time, had the annual women's conference at the community center, featuring Robin Dykstra as speaker, who is a nationally acclaimed author and motivational speaker, along with a full program. So you can see that there too. So big weekend celebrating the importance of women in our community today and yesterday, and I'm sure tomorrow. Next, I wanted to share brag about our administrative services department. And once again, this is not easy. Let me state that. This is the Excellence in Budgeting Award from the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers. Mr. Engel, congratulations to you and your team. This is a huge effort to apply for this and to be recognized. And it just goes to show the incredible work our administrative services team does, led by Director Engel. So I'm very, very grateful to them for their work. It's great to be award winning. To that end, it's also great to have great leadership, great management, and appropriate development such that your credit rating upgrade. So you'll see later, this is very important. We received an upgrade to our Standard & Poor's Global Credit Rating, A+. I think we're an A+ city. I've known that for a long time. I'm glad Standard & Poor's finally recognized that as well. So this will have a direct impact on our borrowing rate, as you'll hear from our speakers in just a moment. We're very proud of the A+ rating because our community has a very stable outlook and a very strong financial footing. So that's a terrific upgrade. I'll continue to share about road work continuing in downtown. I want to remind people this project is definitely seeming long, and it is. We've had rain. What we need for the next portion of the project, where we'll be doing microservicing, it needs to be dry for a number of days. And so that's why we're kind of stuck. There's some portions of the roadway that look patchy where we fixed one part and not the other. That's because there's two different paving treatments there. Microsurfacing's more cost effective, but in some places we couldn't do that because the road was more damaged. And so as you can see, this project will continue through Friday, March 15th. We'll be doing demolition of the curb and gutter on Palma Avenue between City Alley 1 and West Mall. And then the week of May 18th, we'll paving work on Palma Avenue between Traffic Way and Rosario, which is a part of the separate F14 pavement rehabilitation. Reminding people that F14 is a half-cent sales tax that the council has used very effectively to pave neighborhood roads. And F14 has really been the factor in catching up on our paving in our community. And I know that's so important. And we might be talking about those types of measures in just a little bit as well. So again, downtown work will continue in spring. We can get the microservicing going. That requires warmer temperatures. Next, it's looking very good that we're going to light up the Sunken Gardens. So we've met with 3 companies. They have terrific ideas. Proposals are due. More important, sponsor dollars are coming in. So there's obviously a desire to light up our beautiful Sunken Gardens in front of City Hall. And the holiday season will be very special. And I really appreciate Director Banish and her work on leading this. The proposals are due March 15th if you want to submit a bid for helping us light up our Sunken Gardens. And if you're thirsty and need something to do, on March 23rd, we have the 6th annual Central Coast Craft Beer Fest. This is always a great time. Look at this, 55 independently owned craft breweries, ciders, seltzers, kombucha, and wineries. And so this is just a great afternoon from noon to 4 to enjoy beautiful weather and local craft beverages. We'll have entertainment, food trucks, street fair vendors, lawn games. This will sell out. So just like I warned dads with the father-daughter dance, don't be that dad that waited to the last minute. Don't be that festival goer that waits till the last minute, because it will be sold out. So those are all the good things happening in our community. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much, Manager Lewis. And I would also add, on behalf of the whole council, congratulations to Director Rangel for the budgeting award, and thanks for the terrific work that you're doing. And I can attest that the women's events for International Women's Day this past weekend were excellent. I was present at both the Friday night celebration and the Sunday tabling, and it was very well attended eventually, and quite lively. Any questions from council on the city manager's report? Mr. Davis?
Thank you.
Jim, you mentioned the holiday lighting that's going to be hopefully happening this year and sponsor dollars that's coming in. How are sponsors going to be recognized for their efforts and their
So-
contribution?
That's a great, so we will recognize them at the lighting. We will have signage in the Sutton Garden showing who our donors were. We're looking at $5,000 donations. Our lead donor is at 10,000 Central Coast Community Energy because we'll be actually transferring to them for electricity shortly thereafter. So we'll have social media spots for them and on our website.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to comment, I was downtown for the fireworks, to watch the fireworks. And it was just, I mean, it was a neat event, but what was so impressive is, just see all of our restaurants were hopping, busy with people walking around enjoying themselves. And again, thanks to Director Banish and to At Her Table for bringing this event to our community, and to the T-Bid for sponsoring it, because these kind of events are giving our locals things to do, but they're, inviting people in from outside and just helping our downtown prosper. So,
Okay. And now is the time for community forum. So get ready, Mr. Kirkland. We're going to call on you. But first we'll recognize folks in the thing. This portion of the meeting is reserved for folks wanting to address the council on any matter that's not on the agenda tonight and over which the council has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record before making your presentation. Comments made during community forum will not be a subject of discussion. Any members of the public who have questions or need information may contact the city clerk's office during business hours, as usual. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, Wendy Lewis with El Camino Homeless Organization, or ECHO. It's my pleasure to be here to speak to council and just provide an update and up and coming opportunity to support our efforts. We are looking forward to our wonderful 9th Empty Bowls event on April 11th. I see smiles on the council's faces because they've all attended. It really is, if you've not been before, it's such an opportunity to help us provide the life-changing resources, but also it's just a great event. You come, artists from the community have made beautiful bowls. Our local restaurants donate delicious soups, and it's just the community coming together and kind of celebrating that these resources are here for our unhoused neighbors. And we're just excited this year. We are so grateful to the years of support from ABC Church and the donation of their space. We unfortunately have sold out many years in a row, so we decided to move it to the Atascadero Lake Pavilion. So our beautiful resource that we all have in this community. So the venue is just ideal. It has the kitchen. We get to set up the night before and bring in all the soups. There's so many great things. So again, we're so grateful for ABC Church for the years that they've supported. Grateful to our sponsors who make this possible. Howard's Products has been our founding sponsor for 9 years and made a significant input. This year, we also have a wonderful partnership with the Pottery, and they actually are having some classes to, the community comes in, they make a bowl and give a bowl, and all the proceeds are coming back to ECHO. So we're grateful for that new partnership, but also a special component to that is they're doing classes for our residents. So the people we are serving have actually gone over and had the chance to make a bowl for themselves and make a bowl for the event. And one of the heartwarming moments that came out of that, we had a participant who is getting back into housing in the next few weeks. And she said she is just so excited to be able to use this new bowl in her new home. So it just was a moment where we're like, oh, this is exactly what we're trying to do. So encourage the community to visit echoshelter.org to find out about tickets and just learn about the great event. We also, just to put it on a save the date, we are the wonderful recipients of the Kiwanis Winemakers Dinner this year. So June 20th, get on their website, look at tickets. We're grateful for that continued partnership as well. And then before my time is up, the most important reason I'm here, last year we were able to help 201 individuals and children back into permanent housing, the most in our history. And I cannot tell you what an amazing start we're off to this year. So it's March 12th, and we have helped 62 individuals or families back into housing. So we are just continuing that momentum, but it's only possible with partnerships like this, our partnerships with the CAT team and the Atascadero Police Department and the community support, as well as the city and council support. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Austin.
Thank you, Jeff Oslin. I, in my family, we did attend Friday night downtown. The fireworks was great. I never realized how busy our fire department can be. I'm used to the police department being overwhelmed. Our fire department was on call after call after call. They should be commended. I had to call 911 for somebody who fell at the event on Sunday. We had a response time in 2 minutes and 39 seconds. I think that's pretty phenomenal. And that's what D20 is supporting. So I want to make sure that we understand that we have funded our emergency services quite well, and we need to keep that going. That also leads into F14. The improvements to our roads have been great. At some point, the council is going to have to consider if they're going to re-up the ballot. I really hope we do. It's a very positive tax. It's not a new tax, and it really helps our city out. It probably also aids into that A+ rating because we look better. We're not having to put so much money into, everything that we have problems with. So this is a great accomplishment for what our city's doing. And of course, our finances to get an award like that, that is top notch. Not very many people get it. Not very many cities get it. So we have an incredible staff, and you should be commended for everything that we're doing on that front. The other comment that I have, and last week we had JPIA do a presentation, and my question for council or legal or city manager would be, when we have presentations like that, the residents of the city can't make a comment or ask questions. I'm just curious how we can do that in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Anyone else in the room? Anyone else online? Mr. Kirkland, you had asked earlier to speak at public comment. Do you wish to be recognized at this time and use the raise hand? Excellent. Mr. Kirkland, you are cleared to speak.
Okay, thank you. I may be at the wrong time too, because I want to talk about the initiative that's going to be on the ballot in November about government and passing tax increases. So I know it's on your agenda. So, but
Right. So if that is your interest, we will have time for public
Okay.
comment.
Okay, that's
Specifically
fine. Put
on
me on
that
hold again.
management report. So we'll keep you on the list.
Okay,
We'll
thank you.
get you.
Okay, thank you.
But we'll defer until, if this is a time for comments on items that are not on the agenda. So,
Okay.
okay. Did,
Thank you.
you had a community forum item?
Well, I wanted to, Jeff Austin brought something up and it was something.
Okay, I understand we can't be
I'm not
commenting on
commenting
that.
it, I'm kind of piggybacking. He mentioned
Okay.
how our fire department should be commended. I just want to say 2 weeks ago, we had a family medical emergency. They were called. Response time was great. They handled the situation with all the professionalism that I would expect. And everybody turned out to be fine. So I wanted to thank them for their hard work. I did already send an email to our chief and to thank him, but I just wanted to at least publicly say thank you very much for you guys' hard work, professionalism, and taking care of the patient very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I would like to add in response, Ms. Lewis, that thank you so much for the work that ECHO does in this community and for continuing to keep us posted on the number of individuals that you're returning to permanent housing through your services. That's the critical measure of success in this work. With regard to Mr. Oslin's comments, I will oh, did I? Yeah, I will. I have closed public comment. Thank you. No, make sure that that's clear. If our presentations like the JPIA presentation last time, is there a way for public comment to be allowed on presentations?
You certainly can allow public comment on any item on the agenda, but generally things where there is no action taken and they're for presentation purposes only, the members of the public can speak to that during the general public comment session. It's up to the council how it would like to structure the agenda though. So you do have that opportunity as well if you'd like to.
Okay, so any comments would be in, if they're not in order after the presentation, they're in order in general public comment, in public community forum. Okay. Appreciate that. And then we will move along now to, and again, anyone who has comments that they wish to, or questions or needs information in general, please do feel free to contact the city clerk's office at 805-470-3400 or cityclerk@atascadero.org. Okay, now we're going to move on to our public hearings, which we don't have any public hearings tonight, but we do have a management report. And that is item C1, one that Mr. Kirkland has been waiting with bated breath to comment on. First, as we move into this, we're going to start with City Manager Jim Lewis, but I do want to recognize and welcome Mr. Dave Molnax, who is the Cal Cities Channel Counties Division Regional Public Affairs Manager. Got a long comment, and I will ask Mr. Lewis if he would like to give words of welcome first on this item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I did want to share quickly, before you is our recommendation to oppose initiative 21-0042A1. You're going to hear a lot about this initiative from Mr. Molnax, but I just wanted to share the initiative before you would basically disable the city's ability to set or raise fees as costs increase or as things occur, which would critically imperil services in public safety, recreation, and others. And I just wanted to set the context. I've been in city management for 27 years, and this is the worst initiative I've ever seen that would limit by far more than any other action I've seen the state take. And I know that those are big words I share, but I did just want to set the table that this initiative, if approved by voters, would severely limit the ability to have revenue for the city. And so you're going to hear more about that. I do serve as a director on the League of Cities Board of Directors. We unanimously oppose the measure. And now League of California Cities is asking cities to do the same. So I'm thrilled that Mr. Molnax is here to give you an overview of the initiative and the issues with the initiative. I'm also thrilled that our very own regional representative is the director of the campaign now statewide for our response to the initiative. And he's a very capable gentleman. So Mr. Molnax, thank you for being here tonight.
Pleasure. Thank you, Honorable Council. Always a pleasure to be in the most beautiful council chambers in the Tri-County area. First of all, I'd like to explain exactly, do I have a changer or? Oh, there we go. Wanted to talk about real quickly who the League of California Cities is. We're in our 125th year. And what we have been doing over all those years, representing every city in the state on educational issues and advocacy issues. And what we try to do is make sure that city councils members and city staff members are up to date on new laws, new rules, how to address those new laws and rules, challenges that are coming down the pike from Sacramento. And also to make sure that council members are aware of those new laws, new rules. It really doesn't matter how well you do your job. There will always be challenges from Sacramento. Thank you very much. And that's the challenge is you guys can make all the right decisions. Your staff can do all the right things. We still have to be able to lobby, advocate, and sometimes fight Sacramento to make sure that we are making our communities and representing our citizens in our communities to make our quality of life the best it can be. So we have conferences, workshops, seminars all around the state, again, focusing on education and advocacy and making sure that when we do advocate on bills and laws up there in Sacramento, that we're effective, we're informed, and it always helps for our elected officials to be engaged, to make sure that we are effective in giving the message up there to Sacramento and make sure they understand our challenges, and when they need our help, that we're able to help them as well. We are, again, an entirely member-driven organization. We, again, have policy committees that the elected officials and city staff come together. We have lobbyists that bring forth, again, bills. And unfortunately, we have over 2,000 bills this year. Every bill has a dream to become a law. And we need to make sure that our city staffs and our city officials are aware of what those bills do, the impacts those bills could have, and how to best advocate effectively on meeting those challenges, getting our message and our challenges here at the local level up there in Sacramento. Again, this year we have over 2,200 bills, and it's a 2-year legislative session. There are over 5,000 bills in this 2-year session. And 5,000 bills, yes, that's as ridiculous as it sounds, but it is what it is. And this year, we have over 1,000 bills that will have an impact on local governments. And they are in different policy areas, whether it's public safety, housing, these type of policy areas. And we make sure we have lobbyists in each area. They break them down to priority bills, and we make sure we educate our membership and make sure that at the local level that we are educating communities and making sure they understand the impacts of actions in Sacramento, and to make sure that we can engage and navigate best way possible up to Sacramento. This year, again, not only do we always have to deal with bills each and every year, we have to deal with initiatives as well. And what I would tell you in the past is that this year we have a $73 billion deficit up there in Sacramento, our budget deficit, $73 billion. But because in the past that we have run initiatives, the League of California Cities has run a series of initiatives that put firewalls between Sacramento and what they used to do when they got their budget in a mess for years and years and years. They would reach down into local cities' pockets and use us like an ATM machine. Each and every year, the budget was upside down in Sacramento. They would come down and raid our general fund for millions and millions of dollars each and every year. We ran several initiatives over in the early aughts and early part of the teens, and we have put up firewalls to where they can no longer access those funds. Now, with a $73 billion deficit, there might be some programs that the state funding is going to be cut, but they are not taking our money that gets generated here locally for critical local services. And that is because we, as an organization and as communities statewide, have won those initiatives and put up those firewalls to protect our communities. We have right now, there are 11 initiatives on the ballot in November. The top one is the one we will be talking about the most, the Taxpayer Protection Act. Sounds great, the name, Taxpayer Protection Act. Unfortunately, that will win the biggest bait and switch initiative of this season. In every initiative, and I've been a part of 35 initiatives over my career, you have to understand who is funding the initiative. This initiative costs over $15 million to qualify. Those are the top 6 people or organizations that contributed to get this initiative qualified. They all part of what's known as the California Business Roundtable. The Business Roundtable is comprised of the richest organizations in the state and in the country. Multi-billion-dollar organizations, multi-million and multi-billionaires. A lot of those people that are listed up there are developers that are looking for carve-outs in taxes and fee exemptions to make sure that they are not responsible, or they don't have to pay for their responsibility when they do business in our communities. And one of them is an out-of-state AMR, 3.6 million. They're an out-of-state organization that is trying to monopolize emergency services around the state. But again, none of those 6 people up there, I would say it would strain credulity to think that they are concerned about working class families around the state of California. So again, that's why I say it's very much a bait and switch initiative. We have run several studies on the fiscal impact over the next 10 years. We're talking about over $20 billion to local communities. This would pretty much freeze up any type of efforts to raise fees, implement fees for impact fees for companies doing business in your communities. There would be retroactivity. 130 cities around the state in 2022 passed revenue measures to help their communities. That's 3 years ago, basically. And this initiative would actually impact over almost 100 of those 130 cities or revenue measures, to where they'd have to go back to the voters next year if it passes, to incurring costs of elections. You'd have to get a 5-0 vote on your council. You would also be faced with a completely different voting model that are a lot less inclined to support tax increases. Some of the threats to local governments, again, taxes and fees adopted after 2022. Again, they comply with provisions, again, all retroactive. All these measures that they ran these revenues, they didn't even, most of them did not even understand that this measure impacted them. So 2 years later, they say, no, you didn't put in some provisions in your initiative, in your revenue measure. And since you didn't, you're gonna have to run it again. The general tax, again, there are certain provisions that you'd have to follow. And it would also mean, again, you'd have to go back to the voters, incur a lot of cost. There'd be at least 40 bills and laws at the state level that would have to go back and probably do elections as well. So this could be a devastating impact on all levels of government, from the state, regional, and local level. Now, when we talk about your fee schedule, most cities, I imagine you have several hundred fees on your fee schedule. Some cities have 1,000 fees on their schedule. Each and every one of them, if there's ever an increase, because fees are basically cost recovery. And again, as we're living in this world today, there's sometimes beyond your control. There are increases in doing business, like in any private sector business as well. Whether it's supply chain issues, labor issues, whatever that might be, sometimes prices have to go up in order to conduct business. Anytime a fee would be increased, that would be subject to litigation. Okay, somebody could say, I don't believe that fee increase is reasonable, and I don't believe that fee increase is the lowest possible cost. They are changing the definition of how to construct a fee schedule and how to assess the cost of it. And again, most fees, or all fees at our city level, are basically cost recovery. But now it's going to be, you are forced to do the lowest possible cost, which means it's going to be a race to the bottom, quite frankly. And once somebody litigates, you either have to accept the fact that you can't raise your fees, or that fee becomes, you have to go to the voters on that, each and every one. And as we've seen in the past, whether it's the California Voting Rights Act, when we have to redistrict, and hundreds of cities got sued for that. The ADA people that came around and sued hundreds of cities as well. It just, look, we live in a world where when there's a chance to litigate, there's going to be people in your community that are going to litigate. This initiative was so poorly written. We have teams of lawyers that have looked at this. And when we ask questions, well, what does that mean? Well, that's convoluted, it's ill-defined, and it's undefined. That means litigation. In this initiative, not only is it, again, millionaires against working class families, poorly written initiative. And again, this is a constitutional initiative. You can't amend a constitutional initiative. You say, okay, we screwed up, let's amend it like a bill happens all the time. A constitutional initiative, the only way you can amend a constitutional initiative is with another constitutional initiative. So say we wanted to go back and change some things, we'd have to spend probably $50 million in order to try to amend it. And that would be years later. This is going to subject local governments, local, regional, and the state to a decade or so of litigation. And instead of using your revenues and your monies generated here locally to provide vital local services, to make our communities better, It's going to freeze up all those activities because cities like Atascadero have a lot of great things going on right now, moving forward, trying to create a better community, better quality of life for your citizens. It'll all be frozen because you're going to be litigating for the next decade on these type of efforts. Those are some examples of some of the fees that would be subjected to litigation and potentially going to the ballot. So you're going to be either litigating or going to the vote of the voters. And these are issues that, these are typical way of government activities that are very nuanced and very technical and never have been before the voters for the most part. They're all going to be subjected to either litigation or going to the ballot. These are some of the groups that we are working with. We have a broad coalition, and in the past, a lot of times the league was by itself fighting those initiative battles. We have a very strong coalition fighting this because we are represented by we're working with firefighters, labor, regional, local, civic groups as well, trying to make their communities better. And they see the threat of this initiative and how it could negatively impact our communities for years and years. There's over 200 cities right now that are part of the coalition. We have counties part of the coalition, special districts, hundreds of, again, regional and civic local groups coming together, labor groups coming together to fight this horrible, horrible initiative. These are some of the groups. We ran an ad in the LA Times on Super Bowl Sunday. On the left, you'll see those are some of these are huge corporations, again, representing some of the biggest companies in the state. We had the governor, the Speaker of the House, our Executive Director, Carolyn Coleman, other groups fighting this thing and trying to draw attention to the initiative and who's behind it, calling them out, saying, is this really what you want to do to our state and to our local communities? So a lot of these companies are doing business within in all of our communities. And they need to be called out on, is this really what you want to do to us? And we're going to be doing a lot of activities moving forward. Again, drawing attention to their actions and making sure that our communities are educated, are involved and engaged in this initiative. Some of the things we can do immediately, right now we're in part of an internal education effort. We're going around to cities, passing resolutions. We're going around to local groups, making sure they're aware of how it impacts their community as well. We want to make sure that local officials have an opportunity to weigh in as well. We have a website, they call it the Taxpayer Accountability Act. We call it the Taxpayer Deception Act. Quite frankly, that's what it is. This is the classic bait and switch. Sounds good. We've done polling. We've done focus groups as well. What the polling has shown is that initially some of the provisions of initiatives sound pretty good. And I think, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Let's vote on all the taxes or any tax increases or any fee increases. But once they find out the impacts and really what the technical part of these initiatives are, the numbers really swing our way. And what it shows is the more you learn about this initiative, and these are focus groups and polling, multiple polls, by the way, from different coalition partners, what it has shown is the more you learn about this, the less you like it, quite frankly. So what I would say is we're going to be spending the next 9 months, 8 months, again, going out to every community in the state. That is our strength as the League of California Cities. We have leaders such as yourself in each and every city in the state. Your communities trust you. There's a reason they voted for you. Your staff is trusted. We have, again, firefighters, police groups also that are very trusted in their community. We need to make sure they're communicating the proper message to the community as far as the impact and the threat and how it's going to impact our future. Because again, cities like Atascadero, which have so much good momentum right now, great things going on. This initiative will pretty much freeze up all of that and set us all back a decade in litigation again. So this will be a full employment act for lawyers. And that's what we need to make sure we conveying to our communities. This will, again, vital services will probably be cut. Communities that want to build a better place to live for their citizens will have far greater challenges. And we need to make sure that we stop this year and not let this move forward. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mullinex. Are there council questions? Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, just one quick question. You had that list of all the corporations and businesses that were supporting this measure. And I'm curious, what do they get out of it? I mean, when I read through this, yeah, it sounded like I have to agree with Mr. Lewis. This is pretty bad and would be terrible for us to have to endure this. But what are these businesses and corporations getting out of this to support it?
Again, they're looking to get tax carve outs. You know, when they come do business in our communities, they have impacts in our communities. They're looking to make sure that their fees aren't nearly as appropriate as they should be, or tax carve outs for themselves. That's all this is about. This is not about taxpayer protection. This is not concern of everyday working people. These are billion-dollar corporations looking to benefit themselves. And if those carve outs and those exceptions are enacted, it's going to fall on the backs of those working class families around the state.
And how that works in our community, Councilmember, specifically as if Albertsons is building a new grocery store, or home builders are building homes, or they don't want the fees for those services and planning or development or capital impact fees that will mitigate the impacts of their development on our community. They want those to be frozen. And so as home values go up, that puts more money in their pocket. The problem is we freeze those services and our cost for providing those services goes up. I then have to ask you if we need to cut recreation, cut public safety, because we can't raise fees to cover our costs on those services. And that's where it impacts our poorer family.
All right, thank you.
To be clear, though, those companies that he showed on the slide, though, they're members of the Business Roundtable. They are
Yes.
not necessarily explicitly in support of this. And the whole purpose of the advertisement was to say to some of those companies that are members of the Business Roundtable, do you really support this? I mean, your organization does. Do you really support it? So some of those corporations, I assume, probably do not, certainly not actively support this measure. And
Well, as far as being a
Yeah.
member of the Business Roundtable, this is their main mission this year.
Sure.
And so they implicitly, they support the measure.
right, hence the ad asking them to clarify, do you really?
Correct.
support
Yes,
this?
that's correct. Absolutely.
You know, do you really stand by the organization that you're a member of and support this proposition? So I have several questions. Hopefully won't take up too much time. It talks, now I don't understand how you could have a retroactive law. It seems to me that's improper on the surface, but does say that, you know, new or increased taxes must include a sunset date. Now our F-14 has a sunset date, and that's why we're considering putting it back on the ballot. Our D-20 does not, saying in the future, they all would have to have a sunset date. Is there a maximum number of years specified in the measure? I didn't see it when I read the measure.
No, there isn't. And there's several provisions that would have to be included in every revenue measure moving forward. And again, there would be almost 100 cities that passed revenue measures in 2022 that these cities, some of them have gone out to try to get securitized and you know, with banks to make sure they get infrastructure projects. So all these are there are rumors going around where banks are getting a little jittery about, you know, doing business with cities because their revenues are now at risk.
Right. No, I understand. I was just curious whether or not, I would presume that a court might find that particular provision, you know, unenforceable, but I am concerned whether, like, if we renewed F-14 and this measure passed, whether, you know, it appears to be no cap, 10 years, 20 years, 30
No,
years.
there is no
No
cap.
specific cap, but it says you must have a sunset date. Okay. In regards to the fees and charges paid for the use of local and state government property, and I think you listed the example, like, let's say you wanted to rent out this chamber or the pavilion for an event. There appears to be no distinction between residents and non-residents of your city.
That's absolutely correct.
So you essentially would, you know, have to charge the same thing to somebody out of town, as opposed to we, in our fee structure, give discounts for residents.
Absolutely.
And which, you know, makes sense. They're the taxpayers of our community. And this would require us to charge everybody the same and, you know, down to the bare minimum below a market rate. So we would have to essentially be subsidizing people that wanted to rent our facilities, including out of town people.
That's correct.
Okay, and then on one thing that confused me is I've heard it spoken of that, this would require, let's see, us renewing our F-14 half-cent sales tax measure, which is a general tax, although we use it for one purpose, and that's to pave neighborhood roads, but it is a general tax. But that to renew such a thing, I've heard it said that this would now require 2/3, but when I read the measure, it does imply that it only requires for that particular type 50%.
And I also think the important, the word you said implied, and that's part of the fact that this initiative was so poorly written. There's so many parts of the provisions in that initiative that need to be defined. And the only way to define them is by adjudication. This thing will be wrapped up in court for the next decade.
Yes, and I mean, I think, see, that's one of its primary dangers, although frankly, most initiatives end up in a lot of litigation, but this seems particularly structured to cause a great deal of litigation and a great deal of extra bureaucracy on the part of city staff, demanding them to go through superfluous, and highly questionable studies. Okay, and then the last question, let's see, I thought another one. No, the last question I had is the council, pre-question, the other cities, the other 6 cities in San Luis Obispo County, have they already taken a position on this measure?
Several have. One city, Paso Robles, our neighbor to the north, would be one of those cities that would, if it passes, they would have their measure that passed in 2022 for TOT that generates 700,000 a year to help their community, would have to immediately go out to the vote again in 2025, again, incurring individual costs for an election. Because again, normally when you do an election, it's everybody sharing the cost in the county. You would have to incur all the costs. You'd have to get a 5-0 vote on the council, and you would be faced with a much different voter profile that's probably less inclined to help support revenue measures for local governments.
And so has Paso Robles then taken a position in opposition to them?
I spoke to them last week, and they are having the opposition come in next week to speak as well, to get both sides of the story, and hope they have a position after that.
Okay, and so in relation to that, and this would be more of a city manager question. If we pass, this resolution saying, hey, we're joining all these other cities in opposition to this measure, besides, signing a resolution and sending it off to the League of Cities to add to their stack, the practical effect, though, this enables staff as our representatives, and, we as the elected officials who took the position, it enables the staff to do what?
So this would allow, I'm not, many of us have different professional organizations, but I'm not allowed to take positions on political items, initiatives, that sort of thing that are not supported by the board I serve. So for example, if the council does oppose this, that would free up me and the staff to then discuss this with others, speak to community groups, educate the community on the impacts of this measure. So it would allow us to actually act. It would also allow us in our free time to campaign to oppose the measure. If the council supported opposition, votes to oppose the measure, it would allow us to act. So this basically activates your staff, for those of us who have codes of ethics, to support your position.
Okay, but largely on your own time, though, because I mean, I don't want to politicize our staff in opposition to a proposition, would be my concern. Okay, I think that's all I have questions. Thank you.
Good to see you, Dave. I think my colleague over here has asked all the questions that were coming to mind. Thank you.
We can always count on Councilmember Bourbeau for good questions. I do have a few. I want to make sure that we're clear for the public, the impacts on our community, as well as the specific, these are the general impacts on cities. Starting with our measure F-14, which is a general tax measure that funds neighborhood roads by advisory. My understanding is that this initiative would prohibit us from doing that kind of an advisory measure and would require it to be a specific tax, and that tax, if we renew it, that would have to have a 2/3 vote of voters.
That is correct. That this measure does eradicate any advisory votes to your community on what might the revenues be used for. You can no longer do that.
And can I ask staff if you know what percentage of voters approved Measure F14 in it originally?
It was a little over 58%, I believe. It might have been 59%.
So very similar to what D20 passed.
Yes.
Okay. Then let's also look at Measure D20, which was our initiative that has provided critical funding for our police and for our fire services and for infrastructure and public services here in the community. My understanding, would I be correct in understanding that we would not lose that initiative, but that if we ever had to come back to the public because we needed more money for funding our police, that we would have that would have to be approved by a 2/3 vote of the voters in a time limited initiative.
That is likely. And again, that's something that, because the language again is so convoluted and ambiguous, you'd probably first off have to go through some adjudication, spending money on court, on legal fees, and then live with the decision from there. But yes, this is incredibly, it basically puts local governments in a straitjacket. And to think about planning in the future, your tax fee schedule for the future, planning future costs. Look, it used to be $5,000 to replace a fire hydrant. It's now $25,000. How are you supposed to know that when you're making plans for your future, for the future infrastructure costs? It used to be $1 million to put a pipe in, mile of pipe. Now it's $3.5 million. Are you supposed to know that at this point in time? How are you supposed to plan for that? I mean, this could have a devastating impact on all local governments and state government moving forward.
Okay, understood. Let me check a couple other things. So recreation programs. So if our recreation department wanted to offer a new kind of program, that they would either have to not charge for it, or we would have to wait for an election and put this up to the voters.
And especially if somebody wanted to sue. And again, there's always a few people that want to do that. So again, it's almost everything about this, and there's nothing good about this initiative, quite frankly. And every phase of it will probably cause adjudication.
Right. Okay. So let me also ask about our weed abatement program. This is a very important fire safety issue in our community, where we have a lot of areas that are in the wildlife urban interface. And we have a weed abatement program that requires people to clear their weeds, cut down their weeds and keep them mowed down, or the city will come and do it for you, and you have to pay, the cost of that service plus your share of the cost of running the weed abatement program, which is prohibitively expensive. And hopefully, we would like to have a day when everybody does their weeds and nobody has to pay that. But would be my understanding that those fees would have to be fixed, and that then if someone that we could potentially not be able to charge to have that kind of a program.
That's correct. Those type of programs, and any fines and penalties too, they can just say, I don't think that's reasonable. And then you either have to accept that or it's adjudicated. And then if it's after the adjudication, it's highly likely that would have to go to a vote.
Okay, and you would probably have to do a cost study to support
Absolutely.
that and all of that. So what I'm hearing in function after function is that as services change or costs change, that we would end up having to lay off firefighters or police officers and hire accountants and lawyers.
Absolutely. Vital services will suffer everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. That's and then lastly, we have a zoo, which not too many cities do.
Great example.
Right, with lovely zoo. Zoo admission, I presume, is a fee. Would we would we be required to figure out the cost of the zoo per person? The cost of a.
Yeah, we'd have to,
of
that's
a
a good
zoo
example.
admission and
We'd have to determine the actual cost of what it really costs for us to provide the zoo to a person, including food, electricity, uh, miles walked in the zoo, asphalt impacts. I mean, you think about it, and that can still be challenged and you go to a vote. So what it means is then we probably close the zoo because as it gets more expensive and food gets more expensive, and the last thing you're probably going to want to cut is public safety. So this goes back to your point that then all these nice things we have for our families go away while home builders and the private sector gets profit. That's what happens.
right. Okay. Then just as a general thing, Mr. Molnax, one of the things that it sometimes mystifies people is why why government needs to find additional sources of revenue. Can you talk briefly about what's the impact on city revenues generally of the fact that, sales tax, exempt services and more spending is moving to services away from goods that are taxed to services that aren't, and the impact of course, we have Prop 13 limits that very properly keep lids on the evaluation of homes, but over time they must have some collective impact on the way that revenues for cities grow relative to the way that the economy grows. Can you comment on that?
Well, and again, like, people talk about, cities should be run like private sector. Look, think about a private business. Again, issues that are completely beyond their control, whether it's supply chain issues or labor issues. Would you expect that business to go to their customers for a vote? Can I raise my taxes to be able to pay my bills? It's the same thing with cities. You're basically going to be, again, fees are cost recovery. You guys aren't having fees to generate excess revenue. It's cost recovery to provide vital services for your community. And that's what this is going to freeze up. You're going to be expected to justify with major studies and litigation time and time again, moving forward to, again, the inevitable result will be you will have to cut services and you'll have to cut staff to pay for legal fees. This will be a full employment act for lawyers. So if you like that, you'll love this initiative.
Yeah. One last question in terms of speaking of the law, we get a lot of concern with members of the public about the impact of speeding in our community in residential streets. Would speeding tickets, how would you under this initiative do the cost of a speeding ticket, and would we even be able to enforce those kinds of laws?
That's a great question. Again, because the way this initiative is written, it is highly likely that somebody can say, I don't think that's reasonable for that speeding fine, and I don't think it's reasonable for that speeding limit. And guess what? Then you have to go to court. I mean, it's a crazy initiative. As your city manager pointed out, I've been involved in over 35 initiatives in my career. This is the craziest one I've ever seen. And again, sometimes it's hard to explain, but it really comes down to millionaires versus working class families. It opens the door for a torrent of litigation, and vital services will be cut. It really breaks down to those three talking points.
And last, a timing question. By accident of timing, tonight we only have 4 members of the council. And typically on significant items of public interest like this, we have tried to have unanimous votes of all 5 members of the council. Would it be problematic for you in any way to have us wait for the final vote for
not at
2
all.
weeks so that we could have all 5 of us present?
And by the way, I totally understand that consideration. Would love to have that 5-0 vote. Absolutely. So I'm not looking for any direct action at that expense.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, at this point then, I would like to open up public comment. So if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Molinak, stepping away from the microphone so the members
Thank you
members
very much.
of the audience who wish to comment can step up. Anybody in the room want to comment on this item? No, okay. Online. Now, Mr. Kirkland, this is your moment. Would you like to raise your hand on Zoom so that we can recognize you for public comment on the item that you were hoping to talk on? I see him still there. Well, we're looking for Mr. Kirkland to see if he wants to come back in and comment. Do we have anyone on the phones, Luke? No, okay. We do have one in the audience, so
Good evening, Council.
Mr.
Jeff Osland, once again, I'll be brief. Bottom line is I hate fees. I would love to see our impact fees and everything get halted and reversed. But the impact of this proposed ballot measure that's on the ballot is ludicrous and ridiculous, and it would break our city, which is vibrant now. So I urge the council, when they get the chance to vote, I'm hoping for a 5-0 vote to squash this damn thing. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Osland. Anyone else? Online. Mr. Kirkland, this is your moment. And he seems to have stepped away from our meeting. Is anyone else? Ah, there we go.
I'm here.
Mr. Kirkland, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you. When I see this, I'm going to use some of the terms that the Mullenix, I think was his name, said. This initiative seems to be I'm trying to think of the term he used. I've been running. That we want to put a block between government and the taxpayer. And this, he talked about putting roadblocks between the state government and the local governments so they can't take your money away. Well, this initiative seems to be a roadblock that local governments and the state can't take away from the taxpayer. And this is why I'm supporting it. But also, I find it amazing, and I think unethical, at least inappropriate, that the staff who works for me and you would decide that they're the ones who I should oppose this initiative. I think it's up to the voters to decide whether they want this initiative, not the League of Cities or the City Council or the staff in Atascadero, who I happen to employ and pay for. And I don't want propaganda, which I think what this guy's putting out, telling me how I should vote and pay, and I'll end up paying for it with my taxes, unless he's very, very careful, and you're very careful that you use no tax money to advocate for this initiative, because as I understand it, that's illegal. And educational becomes propaganda very quickly and easily, crosses the line, and scare tactics, I think, are the wrong way to go about it, telling us that we won't have any more firemen left. Your guy's going to close the doors and there's no more going to be city government. I don't think that's true. And if you don't want the voters to decide what to raise the fees, maybe the voters don't want the fees. And they'll live with whatever they live with. Also, I think it's long past time that government at all levels should live within their means, not constantly trying to increase their means. If they can't, if the citizens of this city don't want to pay for a better fire department, they'll live without it. And that's what should happen here. So I'm very happy with this initiative, and I don't want to be propagandized into thinking that I'm against it by my own tax money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. Anyone else online? Now, if you are online on the Zoom call and wish to speak on this item, use the raise hand function on Zoom. Click it at the bottom of your screen. Or find that little hand item. Okay, I seeing no more persons seeking for public comment. I'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to the council for discussion.
I do have one quick question, and I think Mr. Kirkland kind of sparked this question. Why isn't something like this? Okay, we just had a vote, and there was a ballot that was out, and like as Mr. Molinek said, that when you're doing a vote by yourself in the city, you incur all the costs. But this was a countywide thing for a number of things. Why wasn't something like this on the ballot for the voters? I mean, I understand the way we're doing and I actually support that. But just to clarify, what Mr. Crooklyn was saying is, the voters aren't having a say in it. Should they? And they're not, and why not? What would be the implication?
This will be going to the voters. So this was an initiative that people were paid 10, 12 bucks a signature to stand in front of stores and get citizens to sign. It then qualified based on those signatures. And so it will be on the ballot in November. And so we're suggesting that this is so grave, with all due respect to the previous speaker, if a company couldn't adjust its prices anymore, it would shrink. The president just spoke about shrinkflation. I mean, you end up having less fire than no fire. And that is protected by 34% of the population, right? So with the 2/3 vote. And so that's the issue with it. So this will be going to the voters.
Okay.
I'm giving you my recommendation as city manager that would be impossibly difficult over years if this was approved to operate the city with the level of service I believe a majority of your residents want.
Okay, so I understand a little bit better now, because I thought it was as an initiative. I figured it was going to be voted on by the people, but now, understanding a little bit more is that what we're doing as a council is, like, as you said, campaigning for it on your own time toward, against, opposed, or in whatever way, in this case, opposed to it. So, all right, that makes sense then. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm going to defer to Councilmember Newsom because I asked all of her questions. So would you like to comment first? All right.
Go ahead, Charles.
Couple of things. I mean, to me, I know Mr. Kirkland believes in efficient government and this would not bring it. And I understand the thought concept that, voters should have a chance to vote on fees, but that makes for very inefficient government that we're going to vote on, and bring down to the lowest possible level any kind of fee for just commonly used things. And the fees are charged so that the people using them are helping pay the costs and not just the general taxpayer. And it's unfair to the general taxpayer on many of these fees if you didn't charge them. Because the people that are utilizing a particular kind of service should be the ones helping to pay for that in many cases. It's extremely objectionable that there would not be a distinction between resident and non-resident. That's inefficient and ineffective and not fair to the taxpayers of this community. And I understand some of the concerns there, but and our sales tax measures have gone before the voters who approved them in the range of 58% and have been well served by the revenue raised by that. And, make that choice locally to charge a local tax that goes to local services. And I always think one of the problems that we have in California is folks are frustrated with government, state government in particular, and then frequently they're asked to take it out on local government, which is where not only does the rubber hit the road on so many services, it's where people really do have control. People can say no to a local sales tax measure and sometimes do, but they also see the direct benefit of it. And so, their frustration with state government is sometimes mistakenly taken out on local government. And that concerns me about this. And I just see a whole host of inefficiency coming out of this, as well as a litigation, which is, no offense to our city attorney, is just a complete waste of money to spend money on litigation that this would encourage. I do want to say I am always concerned, though, about staff spending time as an advocate for a position that's before the voters. We who are elected can always advocate for a position or against a position. We're elected by the voters and we advocate for or against a position at risk of our seats that the voters may not like what we're doing and vote us out next time. So we're certainly at liberty to do that. I am always a little concerned. So I wanted, ensure that staff's extremely careful in doing this sort of thing on their own time, and that the presentations, if they're asked to make presentations on this measure, that of course they'd be very objective. In that matter, I'm not thrilled with some of the whereas languages in the resolution, little hyperbole in there that I'm not always excited about. But I do, I was a little surprised, Mr. Mullinex. I don't know about the timing issue, but I'm fairly confident that the mayor, if she was here, would certainly be voting the way I would intend, which would be in opposition to this measure or passing a resolution in opposition. I don't know what we necessarily gain by waiting. I guess I'm curious what we would lose by waiting. Most of the time about that though is when we really want to rehear something at another time, we essentially got to go through this process again. We don't necessarily have to have the same lengthy presentation, but we do have to, of course, allow additional public comment. And we try generally not to remake the sausage, as Mr. Osmond saw with us and voting on the other item earlier. We try not to remake the sausage that we already made up here. So, I mean, I'm ready to, vote in favor of the resolution itself, opposing the measure.
I do think that we gain strength by having it be a unanimous vote. That's been particularly important on our tax measures that we brought forth. And this is something that fundamentally threatens the ability of our city to function over time, and would render government vastly more inefficient. So it's an enormous waste of taxpayer money, as opposed to being something that is actually about accountable and efficient use of taxpayer money. It's a taxpayer waste and lawyer employment act, as opposed to something that's actually about protection and accountability. And over the time, it threatens our ability to do the core functions of funding our public safety and essential city services. And it threatens our ability to do those things that a majority of our residents like and want us to do, which are making services and facilities available to the community and experiences that our people enjoy and appreciate. I do think it's worth recognizing that we're going to have a little bit of a more additional discussion, and there might be someone else that shows up for public comment. And we'll give Mr. Kirkland another 3 minutes if he comments next time. I think it's that short delay is worth waiting for so that we can be unanimous.
May I give you just a housekeeping item? So it's ahead of you.
Charles has a motion on the floor already.
Oh, I said I was ready to make one. I didn't.
Ready to make one, but it was
I
not,
didn't
right.
form-
There was no formal motion made.
So now we're having a council discussion.
Yes, we're continuing council
Okay.
discussion about what the motion might be.
City manager, go ahead.
I just wanted to share that your next meeting is very full. So you have the annual housing and general plan report, which will take a bit of time. We'll have a several-hour discussion on the meat of the general plan and bringing back your land use plan. And we also have the discussion of whether to put F14 on the ballot or not. So you have a full meeting. On April 9th, we'll be missing a council member, so we'll be back in the same situation. And so I think the council can certainly vote on this whenever you choose. That's your prerogative. But it'd likely be end of April, May. And I think the League of California Cities is trying to show strength and show unity as this measure is headed to the official ballot in June. The measure could be pulled. The measure could be, there could be other things that occurs. I think Cal Cities was trying to show strength in cities standing up against it and get the word out. But you certainly can vote whenever you'd like. The next meeting's already gonna be very long. And so I just wanted to tell that. So if you wanted to put it the second meeting in April, and is that important to the council? I think the act of us standing in opposition to the measure for the purposes of League of California Cities with 4 votes or 5 votes to League of California Cities, the resolution is important. If the council believes that 5 votes are important, then I would likely have it on the agenda the second meeting of April.
And I don't think it's going to need, since we've already had our full discussion here, I don't know that it's going to need an extensive period of time. Then we're going to short presentation and the mayor would have the opportunity to ask her questions and engage in a discussion that she wanted to add to it before, and then we can
Mark,
vote. So.
sorry, Mark, do you have anything to add in our discussion?
I was just going to concur with Charles and I don't really see the value in prolonging the vote. I don't think we're going to likely be 4-0 now. I don't think 5-0 is going to change anything. I'm confident that Mayor Moreno would agree with our vote and it would be a 5-0, but I don't see the point in delaying this just for the sake of getting 5-0 versus 4-0.
I agree, and I'll make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation and oppose initiative number 210042A1.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Call roll, please.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Moreno absent.
Can I ask for a small break?
Sure. Would you like to, short break? Okay. We're going to take about, a 6-minute break right now. And we'll be back shortly. Okay, now my mic is on. Okay, I will call us back to order. Thank you for being with us in the break. The council meeting has resumed. And now is the time for council announcements and committee reports, where members may make a brief announcement or a brief report on their own activities, or the standing committees on which they serve. Let me just start with Councilmember Newsom.
Nothing to report.
Well, and I have Integrated Waste Management Authority meeting tomorrow. And I would add a comment that this weekend I actually had the opportunity to throw out the first pitch for Little League. Did a lousy job at that part of it. But but what I wanted to comment on is the Little League folks have rebuilt entirely the dugouts down there with a lot of aid from contractors providing materials, et cetera, and a substantial donation from Rotary Club. So that's one of the reasons I was there. And it looked great. A lot of parents and kids out there enjoying it. And it's just great to see, again, volunteer spirit in our community, making things happen.
Very good. Councilmember Harris.
Very cool. I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple of things. I will be filling in for Mayor Moreno at the Mayor's Roundtable on Friday. The Atascadero Atascadero Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, say it 3 times fast, does have the exciting annual report for water year 2023 available for public comment. You can find it looking through atascaderobasin.com. And that will be up for 30 days, and then we'll be sending it on to the state. Design Review Committee will be meeting next on the 28th. And the Homeless Services Oversight Council will be meeting on March 20th. And that's all I have. Okay, so now is the time for individual determination or action. Anybody have any individual determinations? No? Okay. At this point, then, we stand adjourned as a city council, and we will move immediately to a meeting of the successor agency. Okay. I'll get our agendas and packets switched out. Time for the pink packet. Okay, I would now call to order the meeting of the City of Atascadero's Community Development Agency of the Atascadero for the redevelopment and housing purposes. Did I get that right? Sufficiently? Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Here.
Councilmember Darris,
Here.
Councilmember Newsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk,
Here.
and Mayor Moreno is absent.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Darris,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Moreno absent.
Okay. And now is the time for the consent calendar. Is there any council member who wants to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Darris,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Moreno absent.
Okay. Now we have community formed for the city council as the successor agency. Is anybody with a burning issue that they'd like to bring forward to us? Checking online. If you're online and would wish to comment on anything under the jurisdiction of this particular body, please use the raised hand function on Zoom. Do we have anybody on the phone? Nope. Okay. Closing I will close the community forum then. We will move directly to our management report. So Ms. Rangel, Director Rangel, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. We're very pleased tonight to bring you the final piece of the refunding for the 2024 tax allocation bonds. I will pull up my presentation. Give me a moment. There it is. Okay. Little technical difficulties here. Oh, here we go. Just wanted to kind of present our very incredible and knowledgeable A team here for the bonds from Urban Futures for our financial advisor and fiscal consultant. We have Mike Bush, who's available on Zoom for questions afterwards. We have Wing C. Fox and Doug Anderson. And then from Jones Hall for the bond disclosure and counsel, we have James Warziniak. Is that close, James? And David Fama. And then as an underwriter, we have from Piper Sandler and Company, Ralph Holmes, present with us tonight, and Tony Rapista. So just a little summary of where we've been so far. Back in January, the City Council, sitting as this body again, authorized the issuance and sale of the 2024 tax allocation bonds, refunding the 04 and the 2010 reimbursement agreement bonds. In January 29th, the San Luis Obispo County Oversight Board approved the issuance, and then that was forwarded to the State Department of Finance, which then approved our refunding in February. As we talked about, City Manager Lewis talked about earlier, we did receive our rating upgrade from S&P to an A+, which is excellent. And then tonight will be the final approval needed for these bonds. Can't celebrate enough our upgrade to the A+ from the former A. And in last month, we met the staff and the financing team met with S&P and evaluated our the bonds for the evaluation upgrade. We emphasized credit strengths, such as the total assessed value of 1.04 billion as of fiscal 24, incremental assessed valuation increased by 202 million, strong debt service coverage, and then essentially we could lose all of the top 10 taxpayers in the agency and still have good coverage for the bond payments. And of keynote here is strong leadership and a strong management team. So that really helped to influence our credit rating. So I appreciate you for that and congratulations on that as well. And then I will go ahead and turn it over now to Ralph Holmes with Piper Sandler to continue.
Thank you, Director Ruggiero. Mr. Holmes.
So I'll be brief. Just revisiting.
Yeah,
Is Mike not on?
you did, or just maybe stand a little closer to it.
Pardon me.
There you go.
There we go. Boom.
We lost you again. Give us just a moment. We can either do that or can we?
Thank you very much. So
Uh,
sorry, Down.
Here, let's,
We'll be brief.
yeah, there we go.
More
You
trouble than
didn't have to bend, hunch over.
So more trouble than it's worth, I think. But again, my name is Ralph Holmes with Piper Sandler. We're the bond underwriter. We're the ones that actually underwrite the bonds and sell them to investors. Pleasure to be here. So we spoke to sort of what we're doing last time, but just, summary again, we're funding the 2004 and 2010 bonds. And the existing bonds have an all-in rate of about 5%. We're refunding them down to rates that are about 3.74%. Which is, creating substantial savings. We're not extending debt service, same maturity, level savings, very straightforward. Next slide. This slide should look very similar to what we showed you before, because really the results are pretty close right now. I'd caution that we haven't sold bonds yet. The rates aren't final until you sell the bonds. That will be it's scheduled for the 26th, and we'll speak to schedule momentarily. But as you can see, this saves about, $5.2 million. NPV savings, it's about $1.9 million. In terms of gross savings, the city saves just north of $1 million. with the other taxing entities retaining the rest of the savings. Again, repeating, this is moving money from investors' pockets to local communities' pockets, which is the reason we do this. Next slide. So, you want to take this or shall I? So, I'll have to say this really did go as clockwork, which is what we promised, but it doesn't always happen that way. So at this point, we've gone through the process, the rating process. You've approved bond documents, which is what DOF approved. Tonight, you'd be approving the preliminary official statement. That's the document that we utilize to market the bonds. That's in your agenda packet. Assuming that you do approve that, we will go forward and post that POS, preliminary official statement, next week and go to sell bonds on the 26th with a closing on April 18th. I'll stop there and take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Are there questions?
Of course.
I'm looking at you, Charles.
Of course.
I figured you.
Actually, not many, because we obviously approved the basic concept in January. Two questions for you, though. On the slide, if you back up, you showed the net present value savings of $1.9 million right there. In January, that was projected to be $2,032,000. Is there a particular reason for that change?
Interest rates and probably, it's a good question. Probably we're being a little conservative in our rates, but I think, interest rates are off a little bit. We are expecting to get bond insurance as well. We'll receive quotes for that later this week, and that should help as well.
And along those lines regarding the rates, it appears that March 26th is the key date, because that's the pricing of the bonds. That's actually when investors say, I want to buy one of these. And so even though it doesn't close them for like 3 weeks, it looks like we are up here all hoping and praying for, something happening in the market to bring down rates on March 26th, right?
Yeah.
Because that is in essence the day that matters the most in this process. Is that right?
It is. That is the day. So what happens on that day is, leading up to that, we'll be marking the bonds to investors. But that day, early in the morning, we'll release the pricing. Usually around 7 o'clock, we run a price and order period for 2 hours. When we, get orders from investors, and your staff will have the opportunity to actually watch it on the screen, see the orders come in. So it's an interesting process. And we'll go through that process. Later that morning, we'll have a call where we give the results to the city. We walk through them. We take input from the financial advisor, from city staff. And on that call, hopefully we come to consensus on where we're going to underwrite the bonds. Provided that happens, we finalize the bond purchase agreement that is sent to the city, and your city manager would sign that on that day. And
Thank you.
It'd be locked in.
Yeah, okay. Councilmember Daris, any questions? Okay. I'm all good too. In that case, the recommendation from staff is that we had, excuse me, let me ask for a public comment on the item. I'm not seeing anyone rush up to the dais. Anyone online wish to make public comment on this item? One on the phones. Okay, I will close public comment on this item. Then any discussion from staff? If not, the recommendation was to adopt the draft resolution confirming the issuance of refunding bonds, approving preliminary official statement, and providing for other matters properly relating thereto.
Also move.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Moreno absent.
Okay, and now it's time for board announcements and reports in this capacity. Anybody have anything that they really need to enlighten us with?
Not tonight.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.